Welcome to the Hank Haney podcast here on nofilter.net. You can see the Hank Haney podcast on nofilter.net, and you can also see it on YouTube TV, the Hank Haney podcast channel. You can hear the Hank Haney podcast on iHeartRadio or wherever you get your podcasts. I appreciate everybody listening today. The Hank Haney podcast is brought to you by Bet Online, your number one source for NBA Finals and Stanley Cup playoffs this season. You get every stat, every matchup, even live odds and spreads while the games are being played. When the game is over, head over to the online casino, get in on a game of blackjack or poker, or unwind with one of our over 150 slot games. Head to the website today, get in on the action, use the promo code BLEAV for your 50% bonus on your first deposit. It's Bet Online where the game starts. Go to betonline.ag. And the Hank Haney podcast is also brought to you by Haney University, my website, and that's where you find out information about getting golf lessons from me. And today's podcast is a product of one of the lessons that I recently gave, because it got me thinking about the equipment today. And it's amazing how much people talk about how the equipment is making the game easier. And I agree with that to a certain extent. But to me, the golf courses have gotten so much more difficult, primarily speed of the greens, distance. When they lengthen the course, I don't care even how far you hit the golf ball. The longer the course, the harder it's going to play, because the farther the golf ball has to travel, then the more chance it has to go offline. So equipment is better, but in some regards, I think equipment today is a little bit messed up. And I get to thinking about this pretty much every time I give a lesson. And I'm going to give you some examples of what I think is not good and how I think you can improve your game with your equipment. Okay. What's happened is that the golf community, and especially the equipment manufacturers, they are absolutely obsessed, just like obsessed. And I had this discussion with the club fitter, Carmen, who's a phenomenal club fitter, over at the golf practice where I teach in Highland Park, Illinois. And he said the same thing. He said the golf business, golf community is obsessed with spin rate. It is the biggest thing, the spin rate. And they just keep trying to reduce the spin on shots, on clubs. And the reason being is that there's one thing that sells in golf. There's only one thing that sells. When you're selling equipment, the only thing that sells is distance. Like, people do not buy more accuracy. They buy more distance. And this has always been the way it is, but it has led to equipment just being made so that they're just obsessed about distance. That's all they care about. Forget about easier to hit. Forget about easier to get up in the air. Forget about easier to make contact with in the center of the face. Forget about all that stuff. It's just distance, and that's what sells. So that's what drives the bus. So they keep reducing the loft on the clubs, and they keep reducing the spin on woods and drivers in particular. And the idea is, I'm going to launch the ball up, but I'm going to spin it less, and it's going to go farther. And most people spin the ball too much because most people who play the game slice. Okay. So they slice the ball. When you slice the ball, left to right for a right-handed player, right to left for a left-handed player. When you slice the ball kind of rises up in the air and it comes back at you. So it doesn't penetrate as well. A properly struck shot is going to kind of have a hump to it. So it's up in the air and it's humping over. So it's going to land at more of an angle, and that's going to allow it to roll out. When you slice it, it just climbs, and everybody goes, "Ooh!" You know, when you hit that shot, "Woo!" And it looks like a good shot, but it doesn't go anywhere. I remember way back when I went to the Western Open at Butler National in Chicago, and I never forget. I was on a standing behind a par three, and Arnold Palmer was hit, and he hit this shot. And when he hit it, and I don't know what club he hit. It was a longer club, might have been a fairway wood or whatever. And he hit it, and the ball just rose up into the air. It's a shot over a lake. And when he hit it, and he was such a showman, he hit it and he held his finish and he looked at it because it was headed straight at the hole, but it had this big rise to it. And everybody, when one of those, ooh, look at that, and it goes up in the air, and it was into the wind a little bit. And he's holding his finish and he's holding it, and the thing goes right in the middle of the lake. And of course, all the fans go, ooh, and he had to know it was in the lake as soon as he hit it. But that ball was spinning too much. And the ball used to spin a lot more. Now the ball spins less. The ball spins less, and that's what they do to try and make it go farther. The ball spins less, and the clubs have less loft. That's the one tool that club fitters use when somebody's spinning the ball too much. When they're spinning the ball too much, they want to get more distance. They reduce the loft of the club. That's what they do above anything else. I remember when they used to come from Nike, and I don't think Nike ever made a good golf club, but they would come, and I was coaching Tiger, and Nike would come in, their reps would come, and they'd bring some clubs that they designed for, and made up for Tiger, and they wanted him to try it. And sometimes they'd get a launch monitor out, and they say, "Oh, okay, the ball's spin a little too much, but we can fix that." And I always thought to myself, okay, how are you going to fix that? I mean, you can't just go redesign this club right now. So what are you going to do? And the thing they always did was they just reduced the loft. And I was always trying to get Tiger to hit the ball so he could find it. Because the most important thing, like, I have a very simple definition of a good drive. It's any one you can find. That's a good drive. Okay. So when you reduce the spin on a driver, you're making it more difficult to find. And I always liked the fact that when Tiger would miss a shot, it would be spinny, so it would rise up in the air a little bit, and it would tend to go to the right, which is better than having no spin and going to the left, because it's going to get in a lot less trouble. But they would always reduce the loft of the club, and I thought, that's the last thing that I want to do, is reduce the loft of the club, because when you have a straighter face club, you're hitting more in the middle of the golf ball. So if your club face is open or closed relative to the path of the swing, you're going to get more curve when you have less loft. It's one of the reasons I'm always preaching to amateur golfers: use more loft on your driver. Use more loft. But virtually everyone that comes to me for lessons, when I look at their driver, unless they've been professionally fit by somebody that was really good, and there's not many of them that are, in my opinion, to be honest with you, but unless they've been professionally fit, okay, by somebody that really, really knows what they're doing, I would say that 95% of the golfers that I see, I don't like their driver. I don't like something about their driver. I don't like the loft. I don't like the way they've got it set up. See, all the drivers today are adjustable, and it's amazing how many amateurs don't even know how to adjust them. But the primary thing that I see is too little loft. I mean, I had a student today that swung a driver at 78 miles an hour and was using a 9-degree lofted club. I mean, there's no way. There's no way that somebody swinging 78 miles an hour can hit a 9-degree lofted driver in the air unless they slice it. That's the only chance they have to get that ball in the air. And when you have a 9-degree lofted driver and you're swinging 78 miles an hour, you're going to slice every single shot because that's the only shot you can hit that will get in the air. So it puts you in a position where you have absolutely no chance. But I see this time and time and time and time again with amateur golfers. So that's one of the things that I see: drivers with not enough loft. Another thing that you see is that people don't understand that the lofts have changed so much on the clubs today, and it's because manufacturers are selling distance. So back in the day, when a pitching wedge used to be 52 degrees, it was a 52-degree club. Now pitching wedges are like 44 degrees. They're like two clubs stronger. This is why you have gap wedges. Like why all of a sudden? See, when I started playing golf, there wasn't any such a thing as a gap wedge. Why is there a gap wedge? There's a gap wedge because they've created a gap. See, your sand wedge is your most lofted club, and it'll have 56 degrees. That's what a sand wedge has. Now, a lob wedge will have 60 degrees. But if general pitching wedge or sand wedge will have the 56 degrees. And then the pitching wedge used to be 52. Now the pitching wedge is so strong, 44, like I said, they got it bent down so strong. And people say, oh, I'm hitting my pitching wedge, 150 yards. That's because it's not a pitching wedge. That's because it's like an 8-iron is what it used to be called. And it might be pitching wedge length, but they've made the length longer too than it was back in the day. And the loft is so little, it's so reduced that of course you're going to hit it farther. But people are impressed with distance, so they create a gap in their club, so they have to fill in with the wedge, because if they don't, they're hitting their pitching wedge, and the difference between their pitching wedge and their sand wedge is so huge that they have this big gap, and they can't hit the shot the correct distance. That's something that a lot of people don't realize. So as a result, you don't need a 3-iron. You certainly don't need a 1-iron like they used to play with. I mean, Mark O'Meara used to play with a 1-iron. Hogan told him, get the 1-iron in your bag. I'm like, I mean, a 1-iron today, it would be ridiculous, because a 3-iron in a set today is pretty much like a 1-iron used to be. See? And for most amateurs who play, like I had an 83-year-old gentleman for a lesson, and he wanted me to help him with his 4-iron. And I'm like, I said, your 4-iron? I said, you don't need a 4-iron. You need a hybrid. You need like a lofted hybrid. And that's a club you could get up in the air. You have to be able to get the ball up in the air. When you hit it, you want it to be able to carry, and you want it to be able to stop when it hits the green, and you want to be able to control it, and you need loft to do that. So for most amateurs, the first iron they should have is a 5 or 6-iron. To be honest, even like my first iron, and of course I'm 68 years old, but still my first iron is like a 4-iron. And that's not an easy club to hit for me. But the other thing that I noticed with the equipment today, and this is one of the big thing I noticed, and this was brought home in my lesson as well, because my student said, can you watch me hit my fairway woods? And the first thing he does is he pulls out his 3-wood. And I'm like, that club is unhittable. You cannot hit that club. There's no chance you can hit that club. He's got a 15-degree 3-wood. And the reason why it's unhittable is the 3-woods today are deep phased, and they're designed to go far. So to go far, they reduce spin. The only way you get the ball up in the air is with loft and spin. And the harder you hit it, the faster you swing, the more velocity you have, the more that's going to get the golf ball up in the air. It's going to make it spin. If you don't have a lot of speed, then you're only dealing with the loft of the club. And with the 3-woods today spinning so little, you can't get the ball up there. I was filming for performance golf which I do a lot of my videos, my instructional videos with Performance Golf, great company. And one day they said, Hank, we want to do some videos on fairway woods and hybrids. And we go out to hit, and I'm hitting the ball. I hadn't played, I hadn't practiced, but I'm hitting the ball. And I can't get the ball in the air. And I'm looking now at my clubs, and I'm like, what? Because I hadn't played a lot, and I don't think I'd even tried these clubs I was using, and they were a top manufacturer's club. So I'm not going to throw anybody under the bus. I mean, to be honest with you, they all stink. I don't like the clubs today. I mean, they could do a better job. I mean, I hope they get it together because I don't. The fairway woods today are so difficult to hit. It's ridiculous. So I had my 3 wood out, and I'm hitting these line drives, and I'm thinking, I can't get the ball in the air. I can't get the ball in the air. I need a 5 wood or something. I need a 7 wood, which makes you wonder and you see it nowadays, like with the tour players, a lot of them using 5 woods. Back in the day, they didn't use a 5 wood. They were using 1 irons. Now they're using five. Now they're using 5 woods, 7 woods. Dustin Johnson, 330-yard drives, and he's using a 5 wood and a 7 wood. That would have never happened before. You would have, when they first invented 7 woods, you'd hit them like straight up in the air. You couldn't even hit them. So I'm hitting these line drives, and I think, what is the deal with these clubs? So the next time I go out to play, I said, I can't get that 3 wood in the air. And I had even increased the loft up to 17 degrees. Still couldn't get it in the air. I brought out my old Tight Lies fairway wood, Adams Tight Lies, which was I was on the Adams Tight Lies commercial. And that was the biggest selling infomercial golf club ever. And that was the greatest club. Shallow face. You could get it up in the air. You could get it up in the air out of any lie. I said, I'm going to bring out my old Tight Lies and hit it. And the next thing you know, I get on the first hole, and I got a fairway, and I thought, it's kind of a 4 wood, but I was hitting it so low the other day. This probably is going to be perfect. I take my first swing, and the thing goes straight up in the air, like straight up in the air, like too high. Like I was wanting to drive it down the fairway a little bit. I hit that thing straight up in the air. The difference between the equipment today and the equipment back, years ago is like night and day. And this equipment today, with this low spin deal that everybody's obsessed with, is so hard to get up, and it's so hard to get the ball up in the air. It's incredible. So I called up my friend Tommy Armour the third. Tommy and I have been friends for like 36 years, I think. And Tommy knows, he is a golf nut. Played the tour forever, played the Champions Tour forever. One of my best friends, and a guy that I love to talk golf with. And he knows about equipment and everything. I call him up. I said, TA, I said, are you hitting a 3 wood? I said, because I can't get that thing up in the, I can't get mine up in the air. He goes, hell no, I'm not hitting a 3 wood. He says, I'm using a 5 wood. He said, everybody's using a 5 wood today. He said, nobody can get the ball up in the air. I'm like, I'm so out of the loop because I hadn't played and I hadn't had a new set of clubs. But he said, yeah, I use a 5 wood. And when I was giving that lesson, I told my student, I said, you need you don't even need a 3 wood. A 3 wood is for a par 3 when a driver is too much. A 3 wood, maybe use a 3 wood if you got a great line, like the ball's in the first cut of rough and it's sitting up and you're on a par 5 and you want to run it down there as firm fairways, run it down there as far as you can. Okay, then maybe use the 3 wood or use the 3 wood off a tee. You notice the pros use the 3 wood because they can hook it with it easier. They got more loft. They can turn the ball over from right to left. The drivers today are spinning so little, everybody's playing a slice. That was my biggest takeaway. My biggest takeaway from the Masters this year and from the PGA is like everybody on tour is playing a fade. That was my biggest takeaway. But Tommy said, yeah, I'm using a 5 wood. And I gotta be honest with you, that made me feel better because I thought, why can't I get the ball in the air? So when I see amateur golfers with that, and I teach a lot of players that are older, and maybe they don't have the club head speed they used to have, and they're trying to hit these 3 woods, and there is no chance they can hit them. Zero chance. So my suggestion unless you're somebody that hits it 300 and something yards, get rid of the 3 wood, put a 5 wood in your bag. That can be your 3 wood. If you want more distance, these clubs are all adjustable. Take your 3 wood, take your 3 wood shaft and put it in your 5 wood. So that'll make your 5 wood longer, and you'll hit it farther because you'll have more speed with the 5 wood. But you got the loft of the 5 wood, so you can get the ball up in the air. That's what I would suggest to do. But I would have a driver with more loft. Most players need at least 10.5 degrees of loft. Most players need at least like if you're an amateur golfer and you're swinging at, you know, 90 or 100 miles an hour or 85 miles an hour, you don't need a 9-degree lofted driver. Get a 10.5 degree lofted driver, preferably one that you can get up in the air. Okay. And don't obsess with all these low spin drivers. Get a 5 wood to use off the fairway, get a 7 wood to use off the fairway, and your first iron probably needs to be about a 5 or 6 iron. And if you do that, you're going to play better golf just by doing that. That is a big, big, big thing that I see in golf today. And the equipment is supposed to be like making the game easier, and in some regards, it's making the game harder. And the reason it's making the game harder is these low spin clubs. A lot of people cannot get the ball in the air unless they slice it, and they're already slicing too much anyway. So it's not good. So that's my equipment suggestion. Golf season in full swing, and of course I know that everybody would rather buy a game than work for one. And so the possibility does exist if you test out the equipment and find the right ones for you. It'll help you. But more loft, more loft, more loft. I'm on this, I've been on this campaign forever, but more loft, more loft, more loft. And you'll hit it. You'll hit it much, much better. Appreciate everybody listening. The Hank Haney podcast is brought to you by Voodoo Pain Relief Cream. If you've got arthritis pain, joint pain, muscle soreness, go to voodoopainrelief.com and check it out. It will help you. It's 100% guaranteed. Absolutely fantastic product, and it will set you straight. I guarantee it. Absolutely guaranteed. Hope everybody enjoyed the podcast. Thanks for listening. Remember, you can watch the Hank Haney podcast on nofilter.net or on YouTube TV, the Hank Haney podcast channel. And you can hear the Hank Haney podcast on iHeartRadio or wherever you get your podcasts. Go to betonline.ag if you want to make a great wager on either the NHL Stanley Cup playoffs or the NBA Finals. BetOnline is your number one source for the NBA Finals and the NHL playoffs. And you can get every matchup, every stat, live odds while the games are being played. Get the whole deal. And go to BetOnline where the game starts. Hope everybody has a great day. We will talk to you soon on the Hank Haney Podcast.